Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. Anyway, I can't tell you how exciting it is to be here at the Joseph DeQuee Farms, and we want to thank Alice and Pete for hosting us today, and I'm so looking forward to Grandma Sue's pie. But it is my honor to serve as the 52nd Lieutenant Governor of Indiana and a partner to our Governor Eric. And as Lieutenant Governor, I serve as President of the Senate, and we're getting ready to enter a legislative session. We're so excited about working with our partners in the Indiana General Assembly to continue to take Indiana to the next level. And when I look back on all the progress we have accomplished in the past 2 years under the leadership of Governor Holcomb, I am so excited about what is to come. But we can't rest on our laurels. We have to continue to challenge and dare ourselves to build a better tomorrow for future generations. And in order to do that, we need you. Hoosiers all across our state, hardworking men and women, who know that when we come together and we work together, we can accomplish great success, and we will. It's an honor to serve with our governor, but it's an honor to be with him today and to introduce to you the greatest governor in the United States, my partner, my friend, Governor Eric Holcomb.
Thank you, partner. It's good to be back in Roanoke. I want to thank, obviously, this property and the restaurant and so much about Roanoke. This is what, in large part, makes Indiana so special. So I want to thank the Eshelmans and Pete and Allison and the whole crew. Your daughter was out parking cars even today. Got everyone employed on this. But this is, as Suzanne just said, this community and this whole area really is what makes Indiana special. It always traces back to the people and the investments and the commitments that we make in our own backyards. And so, good to be back, especially during the holiday season. I did, as is obvious to you, meet the most famous man from Roanoke earlier today. I got my hair cut by Rex. I'm pretty happy about that. Got my Christmas cut. So I'm prepared in one sense. But the other thing that makes our state, I think you may agree, so special is the work that the men and women in the legislature and our administration, predecessors, the work that we do year in and year out. We huddle up every January for a short or long session. And in Indiana, we've been able to realize many of our aspirations and implement many of the plans that we've laid out. And they come inspired by, obviously, citizens throughout the whole state of Indiana. And we've just been on a roll. We're in such a strong position as we close out this year. And I'll be able to articulate just how strong that position is in more detail come January 15th, the State of the State Address, where we'll talk about how we're over-delivering in some areas, and we'll also talk about some challenges that we have and how we can become even better and improve as 2019 unfolds itself. We've listed what our 2019, both administrative and legislative agenda will be. It's somewhat ambitious, to be quite honest, when you start to really dig deep. But again, this is Suzanne and I have been on the road nonstop for the last couple of years. And she usually going in one direction, and me. This is somewhat unusual for us to both be having coffee together. But these ideas are not, they just don't come from us. They come from spending time at Trine. It's good to see you, President Brooks. They come from spending time in Warsaw. Mayor, by the way, Mayor, I just handed from Modelov a bracelet to the Lieutenant Governor. It talks about being stellar in our lives. But this is our MO. This is the way we have been and the way we will continue to be. And so we don't have any pride of authorship other than we've organized a lot of ideas that have come to us that illustrate it is how we have to improve and how we can do it. It's really a blueprint. And in this uber competitive world that we find ourselves in, where our competition is nipping at our heels and trying to close some of the distance between us and them, they're copying our blueprint or our playbook. But one thing that won't change, and I hope you're not surprised by it, is we'll continue to be focused on 5 key areas or pillars as we illustrate them and describe them. We'll be focused on how we strengthen and diversify our economy. We'll be focused on how we strengthen our infrastructure, focused on how we strengthen our greatest asset, our people, in terms of their skill sets, in terms of their health. We'll focus on attacking the drug epidemic. We can't take our eye off this ball. Obviously, it's ravaging too many people and communities all across America. We're not immune to that. We're not atypical. We'll talk about some other safety issues. And then, of course, we'll continue to try to think of ways and take some action steps to modernize our state government itself, to better meet the customer, the citizen, where they are in their lives, how they interact and interface with their state government. So we're very, as Suzanne said, we are very excited to meet with the legislature come this January. We've spent some time already with members and with leadership in the State House, so they're not surprised by any of this as well. We don't like to be a pest, but we like to over-communicate. And it has truly been a collaborative effort to date. So without further ado, I will give you an overview or a kind of a thumbnail sketch afterwards. I know everybody's thinking about the pie, but I did want to spend just a little time to go through it kind of step by step, pillar by pillar. Obviously, we just had an amendment passed, and so it's constitutional now, but we will first and foremost start with this will be our 8th straight balanced budget. Honestly, balanced budget here in the state of Indiana sets us apart from others. So we'll start with that. We'll make sure that we maintain about at least 11% of an operating budget in cash reserves. That's about at least 1.8 billion. Sets us apart. That continues to shout to the rest of the world that Indiana continues to be, in all the markets that Indiana continues to be this place of certainty and predictability and stability. And now going on 8 straight budgets, we've got the continuity to back up that claim. Then we're going to we took a real hard look at not just where we are, but where we came from and where we want to be in 10 years. So we took a look back about 10 years, took stock of that, where we find ourselves today, and said, if we want to continue to be number 1 in the nation in so many key categories, what do we have to change? We looked at our tax code and really scratched at it, and we came up with about 7 key tools to modernize Elaine Beadle is with us today. She's the president of the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, and she and her partner, the Secretary of Commerce, Jim Schellinger, when they're out around the state or around the world, obviously they are competing for not just attention but investment. And so they're seeking to bring more capital, more investment to the state of Indiana, and they're seeking to bring more people or more talent to the state of Indiana. Our tax code has to reflect that, and we need to offer them and us all, as we're building our state community by community, more tools, more up-to-date, modernized tools in our economic development toolbox. So we listed about 7 key areas. One being that we're going to update our industrial recovery tax credit to a truly a redevelopment tax credit. We're going to become, as a state, a market-based sourced state, meaning that we'll tax our services the same way we currently tax our goods. We'll join a number of 26 states that are already doing this, which will make us even more competitive. We will make the venture capital tax credit transferable. This is as we become more connected with the rest of the country, be it Austin or Boston or Chicago or Silicon Valley. This creeps into the conversation more than I would have thought 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. And so we'll become current on that. We'll update our Hoosier Business Investment tax credit. That obviously is going to enable small and medium and large businesses to make investments in modernizing their equipment at their site. We'll provide small business innovation grants, primarily to help our companies here in Indiana and entice them to work with universities, actually in-state higher education institutions. This has worked in other places, and it's high time that we join that crowd. And then we'll update our headquarters relocation tax credit. This is another area where we're experiencing some good results already. Not all from Illinois, but a lot of them you may have seen recently. There has been a parade of companies that are not just giving us attention, but actually making investments in, and not just right across the border in the region, but throughout the state of Indiana. We want other growing companies to also plant their flag, their headquarters flag here in the state of Indiana, and this will help us do that. And then the last item on our economic ecosystem, growing our economic ecosystem pillar, is something that we're not. I mean, Suzanne is knee-deep in this every day, all over the country, having people on different military bases, trying to recruit them to come to the state of Indiana. This is something that we're just not going to walk away from. We have tried, we floated this idea before, and we're going to float it again. We're going to have to be more persuasive this time around. But this is exactly the profile of men and women that we want to attract to the state of Indiana. These are folks who we want to exempt in terms of state income tax, their pensions. So when someone has served our nation, they've had a tremendous amount invested in them already. They're they're trusted, show up on time, stay late, and again, have already been invested to skill up. We want those folks, and by the way, it's kind of a twofer because a lot of these folks, we're talking about exempting them in terms of our state income tax. So they're already bringing with them a check every month, and they're going to spend that money somewhere. And right now, we're losing because I served in the United States Navy, and when I transitioned out, you literally, when you're transitioning out, you look at all the states that do this and don't. And you're thinking about, if you're wanting to keep more money in your wallet, this is one area that you can make an immediate decision. It's going to have real dollars and cents bottom line to you. And so we're going to be pushing for this heavily again and reaching out to different organizations to help us as we have been to date already. The second area that we'll focus on again, and we rolled out much of this, so I won't get too bogged down, although I love getting bogged down in it, but is our infrastructure pillar. This is all about how we as a people and as a state connect with one another and connect community to community, connect with markets, no matter how near or far those markets are around the world. And we do that through roads and rail and trail, our ports, both water and air, and obviously via the internet as well. We were able to, in 2017, pass an infrastructure program that really gave us not just stability, but gave us the opportunity to invest long-term in projects, both local and state infrastructure projects that really put us out in front in terms of that competition that I talked about earlier. In addition to that, a couple months ago, I rolled out the Next Level Connections program. And Suzanne, again, in her world with Scott Rudd, the Director of Broadband Internet Opportunities, has been out all over the state of Indiana. But excuse me, but all of a sudden, we're going to have another state grant program. It's a $100 million state grant program that'll be up and running Q1, so next month, that will help us address, first and foremost, all the unserved areas of our state. You may have seen, it got some coverage, Purdue University put out a study that talked about the 93,000 Hoosiers that were living in internet darkness. That talks about a subset, quite frankly, of the state of Indiana. That talks about 7 or so REMC districts. That number really, excuse me, is about 6% of our state's population. It's about 400,000 Hoosiers that are living in internet darkness, that are unserved. And we just believe the bottom line is those unserved areas, those mostly rural, unserved areas, these are to be connected with the rest of the world, just like our more urban and suburban areas that are. So we've got a grant program that's going to help make that business model actually work. And Scott, Rudd, and you are about the two busiest people in the state of Indiana, getting all over when you're thinking about all those 400,000 Hoosiers that are all of a sudden, for the first time, this is a big deal in their lives and in communities all across the state of Indiana. Now, we've got a lot of people from around the country calling and saying, what did you just do? How are you doing that? Because everybody's struggling with this across the country. Secondly, we've also got another state grant program regarding trails and how we network community by community. This is a $90 million state grant program that we just released the details of it yesterday afternoon. There'll be 3 different kind of town halls all over the state of Indiana, northern, central, southern Indiana. We've devoted 20 million of that 90, to more localized, smaller but local projects that may have sat on the shelf for years and years and years, and again, the business model didn't work, so now all of a sudden it can. And then 70 million will be devoted to larger, legacy type projects that are connecting communities with one another, getting at those quality of life issues that mayors and town managers and county commissioners are all the above are dealing with. How do we connect with one another and encourage wellness programs? This is one area that gets right at that. Obviously, we've got some major transformational regional roads and bridges, but road projects throughout the state of Indiana. We've devoted about $790 million to that, toward that effort, and that's making some major investment in projects like on 20 and on 30, removing the stoplights on 31 South Bend to Indianapolis, truly making it a freeway, moving up the completion date, accelerating the work that's going to be done on Section 6 on I-69, major project. That's not just completing Section 6, that's completing I-69, and then we'll look to a bridge project down in Evansville as well. So the work will never be done. This helps us in a big way complete some major regional transformational projects. Then we've also devoted, just very quickly, we've also devoted some funding to help us, I talked about connecting to markets. This has both got to do with the leisure and the business traveler, cargo, etc., when we're connecting with other markets around the country and around the world. So both think regional airports, Fort Wayne, South Bend, Evansville, etc., Gary, but also our international airport in Indianapolis. We just secured this past May, on the 25th, Flight 500, appropriately named right before the race, our first nonstop transatlantic flight to Paris, and it is performing well. It's got us obviously interested in connecting with some other markets around the world as well. So this is going to help having the funding to talk with different carriers, how we'll be able to realize that as well. We've got some big rail projects in Northwest Indiana, in the region, West Lake Expansion Project, and then, of course, double tracking the South Shore Line, which again is another play at trying to attract talent from one of the major urban areas in the country, that being Chicago. They may not be happy about it, but we are. Excuse me. Our third pillar I mentioned revolves and is focused on our greatest asset, our people. It really is from pre-K all the way through up until happy retirement, and what that lifelong learning process is all about, and how it has to become a seamless transition from one point in your life to the next, to the next, to the next. And we know that the skill sets that are required within a year now, really, but within a year and then 10 years, are going to require more than just a high school diploma. We have some anchors already. We're looking at about 355,000 Hoosiers who don't have a high school diploma right now. How do we skill them up? We're looking at about 550, little over about 500,000 Hoosiers that started college and then for some reason life intervened and they quit. How do we get them back, getting skilled up? And so we've offered in our workforce development plan, we're addressing just that. And we're talking about expanding pre-K within the existing, excuse me, I'm carrying a little cough. Within the existing program, the On My Way pre-K program, growing at about 500, which is modest. However, what we've realized is we have to make sure that the quality of the child care centers that may be out there right now are up to the level of quality learning centers all over the state of Indiana. And so we want to continue to grow this program. We know how important it is as folks are starting out in life. We have to do it responsibly, and this type of growth is just that. We're also, we'll know more, everyone will know more December 17th when the budget forecast comes out with just how much money we're talking about. And then the budget that we ultimately submit in January. But we will be increasing K through 12 funding that can get at increasing teacher pay now. But we are taking a holistic approach to this, and I'm very beyond optimistic. I'm very appreciative that we're sitting down with the Indiana State Teachers Association and have been for a number of weeks, both the House leadership and the Senate leadership and our office. And we've come to the same table and we've said, how do we get our teacher salaries into a leadership position, especially with who we're competing with, who we may be losing talent to. And you can think of the states that we touch, and even Wisconsin. And so we've come to an agreement that we can get there. We need to do this very thoughtfully and very methodically. And so over the next the bienniums, 2019 and 2021, we're going to be able to arrive at that figure, but we're doing it in a collaborative manner. And this is going to be a big, big deal and address an area or a shortage, another shortage that we and other states around the country are facing. But I just can't express my appreciation for the leadership in the House and the Senate and for the Teachers Association for saying we agree on the goal. We agree that we're going to put together a framework, and it's going to not be a study. This is going to be, we're putting together action steps to take from now until we realize that we're not just competing, but we're leading on this front as well. We're going to, very quickly, we're going to provide the funding necessary. We don't want to just talk about offering computer science in all of our schools by 2021. We need to fund it. We will. With the Superintendent of Public Instruction's recent decision not to seek re-election of that position being appointed in 2025, we're going to seek to move that up. We don't think we have a date away, so we'll move that up to 2021. will adopt the Explore, Engage, and Experience career navigation system. That obviously helps students think about what's next after high school, before they graduate. And it really is this, helps with that seamless transition, introducing them obviously to a course that's all about career pathways. We're going to give schools more flexibility in terms of CTE programs. We know from employers that this is, if our system is going to, in part, and it must be, driven by the business community, because they want to grow. They are growing throughout the state of Indiana, so we've got this supply and demand issue that we have to address, and it has to be, again, seamless between the school, state government, and the business community, region by region by region. So this helps us get that. We'll pursue more toward that end. We'll pursue more Pell Grant flexibility. We'll be working obviously with our federal friends in Washington, D.C. to do that. We're going to not just seek, but we will. This is a wildly popular program, started last year, but we'll expand the use of the Workforce Ready grant. We have to date enrolled north of 11,000 Hoosiers in that program. 4,000 have already completed training, so it's a pretty impressive program that is working. We can do more. We're going to seek to, that's the employee side. That's folks who have said that if they go back to Vincennes University or Ivy Tech or through to Work One, that they can skill up, get that credential, that certificate. That's working. That's on the employee side. Then we're going to seek to double the funding for the employer training grant. That's also been wildly popular. We've got about north of 450 businesses that have taken part of that program and trained about 7,000 employees with this state partnership. So that's working. We're going to double that. That was originally a $10 million fund. We grew it to $15 million. So we're going to be honest with ourselves and say instead of $10 million, we're going to see $20 million going into this budget cycle. We're also going to initiate a 21st century talent region pilot program. Again, getting at what are the regional needs in terms of supply and demand in our workforce. We're going to tie a specific percentage of the educator professional grant point program to activities that help broaden the understanding from the educator's perspective on what is available in that area in terms of careers for the students that they're shaping and molding. And then we'll expand the flexibility under the workplace specialist permit to increase the number. I talked about changing the CTE program, broadening it. We also need more instructors, so we have to follow up with that. And to do so, have more instructors. We'll address that. And then a couple just kind of side issues, but they're big, and they get at it in terms of the workforce and the worker. We're going to move the hire program from the Department of Workforce Development over to the Department of Corrections. This is going to join and align better with a lot of the re-entry successful programs that we have right now. We take about a $758 million hit to our budget in terms of the 27,000 Hoosiers that are incarcerated. What we're starting to see at a very accelerated pace is we can reskill these folks so that they know where they're going when they're re-entering society, when they've paid their debt. Now all of a sudden they have the skill set. This is one of those programs that will join, like the Last Mile program, where folks are learning coding or welding or different trades that all of a sudden put them into a career, not just a job, or not right back in the situation that they were in when they went in. Lastly, in terms of our Healthy Indiana program, what we've noticed is, and obviously the goal of the Healthy Indiana program is not to remain on HIP indefinitely, it's to actually get off of HIP. It's to get into a better situation. It's to experience some upward mobility and some private health insurance. What we've noticed is there's a transition period where if you do that, If you do exactly what you're supposed to do, you can be kicked off and you can lose coverage temporarily. So we're going to seek to bridge that gap so folks don't have to worry about improving their quality of life or be stressed out about it, and we can do that. So this is about preserving and enhancing HIP, not threatening it in any way. It's great to see Secretary McClellan here, Jim McClellan. One of the first acts that I took upon being elected, we talked about this coming off the trail, how often we heard about this, was just the profound adverse impact that addiction, substance abuse was having on our people, our families, on our state, community by community. And so we set up the secretary position that Jim McClellan leads to help us better operate as a state and not in a siloed effort as we had before. And Jim has gone way above and beyond the call of duty. I think you travel as much as I do, and Suzanne does, the state of Indiana, because it touches every community, whether it's urban, suburban, or rural, this issue. So we're going to be, once again, laser focused. We will not take our eye off this ball on ways that we can make sure that we're getting the resources to Hoosiers who are struggling. I had someone addicted tell me just last week that it was a lot easier to get off the road to recovery than to stay on it. It sounds very obvious, but this is when your brain is hijacked by these substances. This was an honest and blunt thought that he shared, and we have to recognize that. So we have to continue to invest in recovery efforts. We have to make sure that folks who are struggling with addiction know that the resources are there, and they are close. Obviously, we'll make sure that treatment, that is something else that needs to be immediately accessible and close. We've also come to realize that family recovery courts that tend to look at things holistically are critically important. So I almost maybe should have put attacking the drug epidemic with a greater force than it's attacking us, number one, because it is right there with making sure that we pass a balanced budget amendment, that important. I don't want it to be lost, though, but back in August, or earlier this summer, we had a school safety report published, and it had about, again, real action steps. They weren't just recommendations, they were action steps that needed to be taken. And so that will be front and center in all of our discussions, whether it has to do with funding, technical advancements that we can make, partnerships, heavy into making sure in terms of mental health resources that are available close by, that they are there. But we will enact all 18 of those recommendations. In addition to that, obviously, also in the summer, I don't think Terry Stigden is here. I've been talking to Terry quite a lot in the last 24 hours, but I thought I might bump into her here. But at the Department of Child Services, we also had a report that laid out about 20, it's more than 20 really, because it's 20 ABC and 13 AB, and so it's more than 20, but we will implement and act on all 20 of those action steps. You can get copies of both these, by the way, today. We've got them red, yellow, and green, so whether they're in progress or haven't started yet. If they haven't started, it's only because it requires legislation. So we'll the ones that are have a red check mark, they'll be moving to yellow, and then green when they're completed, but they'll be moving to yellow come January when we're underway with those efforts. Dr. Chris Box is with us here, runs the Department of Health. She has said this on occasion, but we have a long way to go, more to do in terms of making sure more Hoosier babies are celebrating their first birthday. We have we're not in a good position in the country, quite frankly, in terms of our infant mortality rate. And I mentioned in the State of the State address that we had a couple years ago 623 babies that didn't see their first birthday. And what do we do about it? And it comes down to not just, but primarily there's about 13 zip codes, Dr. Box, I believe, that if we really are able to bend that trajectory and get the resources to expecting mothers at an earlier point in their pregnancy, and stay with them through some verbal screenings, through some other means, and physicians serving as navigators in this whole experience when they're most vulnerable and pregnant. This is when they're most willing, actually, to care for that baby to be. And so we're going to continue to move more resources into that area as well. Lastly, on this pillar, in terms of health and wellness, something that we've come to realize, and I'm very excited about this, is we're going to bring this to our state employees, try to lead by example, but on-site work, health centers, clinics, are making a difference, whether it's with auto manufacturers or school corporations. We're seeing wellness and improve where that engagement between the patient and the doctor is close. And so whether you're small companies that come together or large enterprises like the state government or like an auto manufacturer or school corporation, we've got some real live examples out there where this is working. Lastly, on the fifth pillar, we want to provide good government, not just good government, but great government and a great taxpayer value. We want to make sure that Indiana is known, obviously, as both an attractive and a very welcoming place that we all know. Obviously, Columbia City, Roanoke, Fort Wayne, this region just screams Hoosier hospitality when you're here, Warsaw, etc., Wabash. But our administration has had in place an equal opportunity employment policy. I think it's long overdue, but I think it's time and doable that the state of Indiana has one in place too. So we'll be on our agenda promoting a bias crimes bill. This is, in my mind, one of the founding principles of our nation: equal opportunity, of where you get to determine. You have equal access, and you get to determine. Doesn't matter what your last name is or where you come from or your perspective. You get to determine what your destiny is going to be. And we're encouraged that the time is right for us to get off one list and get on the good list. Like 46 other, we'd be 46 states instead of 1 of 5 of them. We're also going to continue to, as have my predecessors, continue to look at the hundreds of boards and commissions that really work because of the government being of the people and by the people. We've got some overlap and some redundancy, so we'll work to realign and restructure and streamline and standardize memberships on those boards and commissions. And we've identified a couple, like the Professional Licensing Agency and the Department of Homeland Security, where sometimes we might be spilling some resources or tripping over one another. Those are 2 examples, but we'll be looking at them all. And then, we're going to continue to, because of technology and the scale and the pace of advancements that are happening and disrupting, we want to be a disruptor as state government and be proactive and make investments in how we better serve citizens where they are in their lives. And I can give you a couple examples, but for instance, our Department of Revenue, we got a computer system there that's about 25 years old. I don't know if you still use your computer from 25 years ago, but I'm telling you, you do not want to think about us using one that's 25 years ago, or we want you to be able to file your property taxes on time. But also, you can do that online, and it'll make it easier to do that. It may not make it enjoyable, but it'll at least make it easier to do that. And so this just kind of in a thumbnail sketch. There's more, and by the way, we have already heard from and are looking forward to more working with legislators on their agendas as they develop and as they share their passions. Obviously, as a citizen legislature, this is how we function best. But also citizen groups and associations have their own agendas, and we're seeking to look. So I don't want anyone to walk away thinking this is the only thing that we're going to be concerned about or working on over the next 4 or 5 months, starting in January and ending late April. But as Suzanne said at the very outset, just to put a bow on it, what we need is your help, as in the past, but especially now because of this uber competitive world that we find ourselves in. We just got a bunch of new governors, a bunch of new legislators elected in this last cycle. I'm hearing from many of them. It's kind of like they're the barking dog that caught the car. They had a lot of ideas, and now all of a sudden they're responsible for solutions, and they're looking at states that have actually been successful, which is encouraging and refreshing. I'm rooting for them too, but we got to make sure that we're staying out in front, and they got a ways to catch up to us. But this is what helps propel us out in front, and that again traces back to our people. So with that, I'm just wishing you the best this holiday season, and we look forward to seeing you out on the trail as the months ahead unfold. Thank you all very much.